Hello and welcome everyone to this video. So I'm really excited that I'm here today with Jeroen Willemsen. So we've just spent a minute trying to get the pronunciation of the name right. So hopefully I'm not doing too well. But Jeroen is actually the principal security architect at Xeba. But he's also a very active member and also volunteer in the OWASP community. And that's why I'm really excited to have him here, because we're going to talk about a little project called WrongSecrets. So welcome, Jeroen, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about the project, WrongSecrets.
Of course. Well, thank you very much, and happy to be on the show, Mackenzie. So, Project WrongSecrets is actually a funny little application which tries to provide different ways on how to not store secrets, and that offer challenges to the user of the app. And hopefully those challenges will help the user to reflect upon, hey, are we doing this right there in our own apps, or are we making the same mistakes as at this challenge?
Yeah, I think it's a really cool way to do it because it's fun. And it's not too complex, but there's definitely some moments as you go through the challenges. They're like, maybe I just might check my project and make sure we've handled these correctly. But it's not a very in-your-face way of doing it. So I really enjoyed going through those challenges myself. Why was it that you decided to create this project specifically?
So the history is a bit odd. I used to give talks for all day DevOps. And at some point I was like, okay, what's the topic I would like to talk about? What's the topic that should really get more attention? Because that's basically what Mark Miller asked. Like, okay, is there something you want to talk about with us? And then I figured, okay, secrets management actually reflects in a very nice way how mature the security organization is. Because all the stuff you're doing basically gets reflected upon your secrets management, the way you protect stuff, the IAM, all the stuff around it. So that's how the app started. Together with a huge, actually one of the challenges packed in the app is actually, something that came from my conscience, because as a young engineer, I once was asked, where do I put the private key of this? And I was like, okay, then I advised my colleague, maybe you should put it in a Docker container, because otherwise it's hard-coded. And ever since then, I felt like, okay, that was the worst advice ever. Luckily, we corrected that over time. But ever since then, I felt like, okay, yeah, you could call yourself a security dude or whatever, but as long as I'm saying this kind of thing. So that's basically me dealing with my past a bit, and now you can enjoy it as well. At some point, we decided, and we means Ben De Haan and I decided to create this, to update this towards an OWASP project instead of a silly little app for some talks, because we figured, okay, there's actually value in this, and now we have to bring it to the masses. And that's where lots of people stepped up to make this the beautiful little web app it is today, within just 3 months of time, based on volunteer work.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like what you say that your secrets management reflects how mature you are in your security within your organization, your application. I think it's so true. And I think what people also don't realize is that managing secrets correctly is really difficult, particularly at scale in an organization, making sure that everyone is storing them correctly. And it can take such an innocent mistake that can be overlooked, and the way that Git works with the history, and you may have a great code review process set up, but if someone's been working on their own branch, they've committed a secret, removed it, merged it, then the reviewer's probably not going to see it. All these things, it's actually a really difficult problem. And what I like about the project WrongSecrets is that we can actually unpack some of those difficulties, starting quite basic and then getting more advanced, because it makes you kind of actually realize that, it's not just as easy as putting them in a .env file and adding a .gitignore and job's done. There's more complexity to it.
Definitely.
So, yeah. And you mentioned another bit. Has it just been the two of you working on this project so far, or have we kind of got some more traction from the community? And what's the future looking for this?
So when I started out a project for all the DevOps, as in just a little sample project for our presentation, I already got help from Nanne Baars and Ben de Haan back then. And once we started to revive this project, they helped tremendously again. So they're really large pillars for this project, and really appreciated their work. And then when we started to ask for help, more people stepped up. So we got 3 testers right now. We're a bunch of other people that actually helped out with showing what might be improved in an easy way. And other people like Dimitri and Philip also joined to contribute. And currently there's about 2 or 3 other developers stepping up and that will file their PR soon. I've seen some preliminary work which looks really promising. So there's way more cool challenges ahead of us that will be implemented soon. And that's beautiful. So yeah, the community is growing already, although we're just in month 4 of being an active OWASP project. And that makes me really hopeful for the future of this project.
Yeah, for sure. And has this been one of the first projects you worked, with OWASP in, or has this been a loving relationship for a while?
So I've been with OWASP for a while, on and off, to be honest. Before this, I did a lot of work for, a lot. I did some work for the Mobile Security Testing Guide, the Mobile Application Security Verification Standard, with Bernard Weller, Sven Slyer, and Carlos Olguera. And that was very nice because then we set up a lot of different things. And of course, you talk to many other project leads then. Which was really helpful for this project because all the best practices that we learned throughout these other projects and collaborating with other teams, well, if you know what to do, it's fairly easy to set it up again. It's not literally copy pasting, but just making sure you get the bare minimal working and just move ahead. So that made it this easy to get the project working.
Yeah, for sure. It remains it's been the gold standard for security guidelines for a long time, and I don't think it's going to lose its crown anytime soon for that. Although there are great resources coming out everywhere at the moment. But what I thought is that we've talked about it for a little bit. Would it be possible that we can have a little bit of a demo and see exactly what Wrong Secrets looks like when you're working through some of the challenges, maybe? Okay.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
So here's my desktop, and this is the Heroku demo at wrongsecrets.herokuapp.com. And this is basically where you land, and there's a bunch of things telling about secrets and stuff, so you get a bit of a context. And then there's a few challenges. So there's Docker-based challenges, then there's challenges for which you need Kubernetes or Minikube with Kubernetes on top. There's challenges where you need cloud providers, and if you run this same app according to the instructions of which you'll find at GitHub, which is over here, then you'll notice various instructions on, how to run this on Kubernetes, how to run this on AWS, how to run this on GCP, how to run this on Azure. So that's stuff being worked on. Let's just start with a few challenges, I'd say. So the first challenge is, for instance, a Docker-based challenge, where which is good to know, by the way, is that all the challenges currently implemented are challenges we actually saw during pen tests, during code reviews, during our normal security duties. And most of the challenges that are set out as issues to be fixed later or to be created or ideas for future challenges are all based on real world scenarios. So stuff we actually saw happening. So it's not like, what a dumb app, how would you be so silly to do this? No, this has happened, and therefore it's now a challenge.
That's great. I love that.
And like I said, I'm one of the type of people that years ago actually became a reason for challenge number 4, for instance. So in that sense, it's not really that strange. We all learn a lot, basically. So the first one is when people write a proof of concept, then you often start to having a hard-coded password in the code. And that may sound silly, but if you have to authenticate towards an API, where do I put the password for our first prototype? Well, maybe in code, because then I can test it, otherwise I have no clue. So then the question is, of course, can you spot the secret when we're looking in the code? And what about a container? So over here you already see links to Java and Docker. So if we click on Java, for instance, then we go to our Git repository. Now, of course, we can click through source, and we can be very silly by just looking for password. I mean, what can seriously go wrong, right? In this repository, and then see a bunch of passwords everywhere. But if it's really that hard-coded, then we pretty much should be looking for something that says that has some value to it. So one way is going over this and going over the various results, but we'll cheat a bit because I know what we're looking for. So if you go to the source code, to the Java source code, then you'll see a folder called challenges. And over there we have, for instance, the Docker folder with challenges. And there in challenge 1, we see that there's a reference towards something called constants.password. So what we have to find right now is that constants class to, solve the problem. So if we now go to, let's see, to source main, and I guess we'll have to find the constants, and that should be somewhere over here as well. There it is, constants. Then we see 2 different things here. So this is password. So hey, maybe this is the one, right? And as you can tell, I did all by web. So what you could actually do is try the first challenges on your mobile phone. You don't necessarily need a computer. It's just thinking clearly about what's happening and then try to solve it. So now we go back over here just to show that this is actually working. Is this working? If I submit it, it says, that's not right. So, okay, apparently it actually needs an answer. Now, if you submit it, then we get, well, as you can tell, this was indeed the right answer. We get points for it. The idea is if you solve all challenges on a cloud environment, you can get the full bar, and we can weight the score points per challenge in the future. And very next to it is, if you're still having trouble understanding what you have to do, there's a hint page which you can follow. And otherwise, you could also take the Docker container, extract the jar file, and use something like GDGUI or JADX GUI to just go over the files. And then you'll find the class file with the password inside, and you can just copy paste that. And now, of course, you might ask yourself, okay, I found it. But why is this a problem? I mean, I just solved the challenge. I'm getting points. This is awesome. That's why we have the What's Wrong button, which explains why this was a bad idea. Because obviously by now, most of the listeners will realize that, and viewers will realize that, hey, if I can get that password that way, everybody can, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the way how to solve that. So that's one challenge. Another nice challenge, let's see if that's for instance, challenge number 3 is, well, you could also have, for instance, package something in your Docker file, like a password. Remember the private key? Well, maybe there's a password inside. So an env as well in Docker containers to set the password. You could easily spot the fact that these type of things are used if you run Docker on top of your Docker container creation definition, so you know what's going on. But for those who want to do it a little bit more capture the flag type of style, the link towards Docker should be an explicit hint to you, like, hey, maybe you should take a look over there. And then in Docker Hub, at the tags, so for instance, the latest, it doesn't really matter which one you take because we built the container similar way. Do you see the steps taken to create the container? And one of the things we do at some point is env docker env password. Well, that is mildly strange, isn't it? Maybe this is it. Literally, this is it. That's why we called it this is it, apparently. And now let's try again. Let's submit that. And again, correct. So another challenge solved, basically. And that way you can solve multiple challenges over time and find your way through.
I love this here. We recently did some scanning on Docker Hub to find what percentage of Docker images contain secrets. And we found about 7% contain secrets. And we also found some really strange examples where you've added in your package manager password into the Docker file, and then later on they've removed it, not realizing that the password in the layered steps earlier is still exposed in there. So, because you can see how people think about this. Well, I don't want that password in my Docker image, so I'll remove it. in their Docker file, not realizing that actually all the steps you've taken are still there. So this is a great example of showing exactly that in real life. I love it.
So examples that will be upcoming, not in the near future, because we first have to work on some other stuff within OWASP that we promised, and then we'll get back to this, is, for instance, the bash history inside containers. We already have something like file inclusion. I thought it was challenge number 12, is that we copied in a file which actually contains the password. So although it's not in the layer directly visible, the copy operation should tell already that stuff's in there that might not should be there. You'll have similar problems, of course, when you say create Docker container from this directory, and then everything gets mounted in from that directory. And then often we also see other secrets ending up over there. So there's a lot of funny things that can go wrong with Docker containers, unfortunately. Or fortunately, because it's fun for OSINT and stuff like that.
Depends on who you are. I think there's been some stressful moments. Credit, and Docker, like Kubernetes, is one of these tools that not every they can be a bit of a black box to the organizations. Not everyone in the organizations understands how they work. So they're actually quite easy to find these mistakes in the real life, because it's widely used as a tool like Git, for example, where people kind of fundamentally understand how it works. Docker can kind of seem mystical at times.
We actually see the same thing at Git, unfortunately, where people unfortunately still forget the fact that if you remove something in the next commit, it doesn't mean that your previous commit got rewinded. It just means you again layered stuff, and that layering of things, like you said earlier, is complicated.
Definitely, and that challenge one is such a great example of that, because when we're moving stuff, we want to test out stuff. We hard code credentials with the intention of setting them up as environment variables later, but just to get things going, and then you remove them, you commit over it, and then buried in your commit, when you're finally ready to do a pull request, merge to the master branch, deep 100 commits back, you have the first things that you did, which was hard coding some secrets. And very difficult for a person to find them, but an attacker, an adversary that knows what they're looking for, is going to be able to pull them out really quickly. So
exactly.
I think, yeah. This is such a real project for me. I was chuckling to myself the whole time when I was going through the challenges, because about half of them I've done.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So, of course, I think this is also a great moment to shout out that if you like the project and if you like to contribute, let us know. Just get in touch with us, because it's like we said, it's all volunteer based. There's no backing or anything other than OWASP generously helping us out with some cloud credits from every now and then, so we can test our AWS setup or GCP or Azure setup. But other than that, it's just volunteers. So any volunteers added to the army would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. And how can people kind of reach out to you or reach out to the project? Is through GitHub the best way, or is?
You'll find a bunch of links over there at our at the beginning of the GitHub repository. We have ways where you can get into touch with us, and that's the easiest way to get stuff going, basically.
Perfect. That's so great. Now, I do want to add just one final little disclaimer in here, is that in Wrong Secrets, there are links to tools that will help you find these. But just in case you're a GitGuardian user and you wanted to cheat a little bit, I do let you know that GitGuardian won't detect any of these secrets because it flags them as false positives. So I just want to point that out in case anyone tries to scan the entire repository with GitGuardian and wonders why the secrets aren't coming up. It's just because they've been flagged as false positives. But there are other tools that are mentioned in the project that you can use. So that's just my final disclaimer there.
There's a good thing to note that some of those tools had some of the iteration of the Docker containers, because some secrets are generated every time again when we build a Docker container, and your cloud secrets for the cloud provider exercises are also generated dynamically. Every time you set up your cloud environment, you get different secrets, which is fun if you want to repeat the exercise. We really know what you're doing. And instead of, playing around with stuff without being sure what's happening, But what it's good to notice is that sometimes these apologies, sometimes these tools then no longer detect it because, for instance, something we generated in the cloud environment, for instance, for challenge number 9, has no longer enough entropy to be detected by the tool, which makes the whole discussion about when is something a false positive a difficult one. Because many tools, and not just GitGuardian, but many tools might have trouble detecting a password, which is a simple sentence that by itself doesn't look to have a lot of entropy, but was cleverly built by a developer that thought like, hey, that's easy for me to remember. Like, with the password XKCD, remember, where we say, okay, battery staples, whatever. If we do something similar for our own passwords for APIs, or for the APIs we consume, then all of a sudden half the tools, that's at least what we saw, do no longer detect these passwords. That's also why some of these passwords, inner challenges, are small sentences like, this is it, or something else, which you'll find out once you open wrong secrets, which are just not detected.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting challenge, especially when you're putting in English words in there, because when you're detecting an API key, it's challenging in different ways. But you're not expecting English words in there, and if they are, they're usually kind of prefix characters. But when it comes to passwords, then the game changes. It's very complex, and you have to. There's this constant way up of, do you want high recall and low precision, or do you want high recall and you want high recall, high precision? But how do you get that with these passwords? So it's an interesting challenge, and I think this project brings to light and will generate. I think what's so great about this project is it's going to generate discussion in lots of different areas amongst this. How to store secrets properly, how to be able to detect them, what is a strong password, all of these kind of challenges. This kind of brings up and creates conversations, which makes it a powerful tool in the developer community, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Well, I'm so glad that you were able to spend some time and walk through this. And I just thank you for showing through us. Please check out the project, Wrong Secrets, and let us know. Let us know on Twitter or on GitHub how you're going with the challenges. It's going to be awesome. And it's be great to be part of that discussion as well, Wrong Secrets, if you have comments about it, to try and bring more awareness to them. So thanks, Jeroen, and I appreciate your time again.
All right. Thank you so much for having me here. I enjoyed it a lot. Thank you so much, Mackenzie.